וכראותו את המון העם עלה במעלה ההר וישב, ותלמידיו ניגשו אליו. פתח פיו ולימד אותם באמרו, אשרי עניי הרוח, כי להם מלכות השמיים. אשרי האבלים, כי הם יונחמו. אשרי הענבים, כי הם ירשו את הארץ. אשרי הרעבים והצמאים לצדק, כי הם ישבעו. אשרי הרחמנים, כי הם ירחמו. אשרי ברי לבב, כי הם יראו את אלוהים. אשרי רודפי שלום, כי בני אלוהים יקראו. אשרי הנרדפים בגלל הצדק, כי להם מלכות השמיים. אשריכם אם יחרפו וירדפו אתכם ויעלילו עליכם בגללי. שמחו וגילו, כי שכרכם רב בשמיים, הרי כך רדפו את הנביאים שהיו לפניכם. אתם מלח הארץ, ואם תאבד למלך מליכותו, כיצד תוחזר לו? הן לא יצלח עוד לשום דבר כי אם להשליחו החוצה להיות מרמס לרגלי הבריות. אתם אור העולם, עיר שוכנת על הר אינה יכולה להיסתר. גם אין מדליקים מנורה ושמים אותה תחת כלי, אלא על כאן שמים אותה ואז תאיר לכל באי הבית. כך יאר נא אורכם לפני בני אדם, למען יראו את מעשיכם הטובים ויכבדו את אביכם שבשמיים. אל תחשבו שבאתי לבטל את התורה או את הנביאים. לא באתי לבטל, כי אם לקיים. הבשורה על פי התלמיד מתי, פרק ה', פסוקים 1-17. Seeing the crowds, Yeshua walked up the hill. After he sat down, his talmidim came to him, and he began to speak. This is what he taught them. How blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. How blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. How blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. How blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. How blessed are those who show mercy, for they will be shown mercy. How blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. How blessed are those who make peace, for they will be called sons of God. How blessed are those who are persecuted, because they pursue righteousness, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. How blessed you are when people insult you and persecute you and tell all kinds of vicious lies about you, because you follow me. Rejoice, be glad, because your reward in heaven is great. They persecuted the prophets before you in the same way. You are salt for the land, but if salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except being thrown out for the people to trample on. You are light for the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Likewise, when people light a lamp, they don't cover it with a bowl, but put it on a lampstand so that it shines for everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people, so that they may see the good things that you do and praise your Father in heaven. Don't think that I have come to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to complete. The good news of Yeshua the Messiah as reported by Matityahu, chapter 5, verses 1-17. Shalom, shalom, bruchim habaim. Peace be upon you and welcome to the second episode of Finding Higher Ground with your host, Gadi Higher. Before we begin, I'd like to give credit where credit is due. A very special thank you for all the people at Epidemic Sound for letting me use their wonderful music. Also, a great big thank you for all the people at Audacity for releasing such amazing, professional grade, free audio mixing software. Thank you guys. And last but not least, all the people at Anchor, powered by Spotify, for letting me use their platform. So my initial plan for this podcast was to go into stories about my life and how I grew up on kibbutz, the Lebanon War, and then eventually going into stories about Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. And all of this will eventually lead to my salvation. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to go a different direction. The whole point of these podcasts is to reach even one person. The one person that's listening to these podcasts that feel like they don't fit in anywhere, they feel downtrodden, rejected. If you had your heart broken here recently like I have, and I'm going to go into that here in a little bit. If you feel like you never measure up to people's expectations, especially the people that claim to love you the most. If you feel like you're broken from the world, that you just had enough, and that you're looking for something real, something that makes some kind of sense in it all, then this episode is for you. You see, growing up in Israel, I felt like that a lot, where I felt downtrodden and rejected, heartbroken. I never fit in anywhere. And this isn't some kind of an attempt at a sob story, or I don't want you to pity me. This is not what this is all about. This is just me telling stories about how I grew up and things that happened to me that eventually led me to come to the realization that things that are said and mentioned in the Bible, both in the Torah, Nevi'im, Ktuvim, the Torah, the prophets, and the scriptures, and Habrit Hadassah, the New Testament, are in fact real. That's right. The whole entire point is to, perhaps by some miracle, reach one listener and show you through my life and my testimony to give some validation, some kind of validation that God exists. I would like my testimony and my experiences to validate the authenticity of the God of the Bible. The best way I can do that is to share with you how my heart was broken here recently, and how I, in my anguish and despair and pain, had no other choice but to seek out God, Adonai Elohim, and bring my pain to Him. But before I do that, we're going to veer off into a quick tangent. There are two types of insanity, my fellow listeners. There are two types of insanity. What do you possibly mean? Well, here we go. You're offered two types of insanity. One is insanity in brackets, quotation marks, if you will. The other one is not. The world offers you one type of insanity where you're constantly being forced to meet unrealistic expectations every day. And a good example to that would be astronomical medical bills. If any one of you had any kind of dealings with the IRS in the past, you'd understand exactly what I'm talking about. Now with current events going on with this vaccine, we really don't know what to believe now, do we? I have my own opinions about this vaccine. I will probably at some point share them with you. I am not trying to tell you to take it or not to take it. You do you. But just remember that I'm going to do me. After all, it is my body, and I do have a choice over my own body. But I digress. Back to insanity. So the world wants to offer you one type of insanity, and then you open up scripture. And the things that you read about in the Bible also can be construed as an insanity of sorts. All the miracles that happen, all the crazy things that we read about, God talking to this person, God talking to that person. And then, of course, there's this one guy, this one Jewish fellow, who comes in the name of the Lord and speaks like the Lord, and he gets crucified on a tree, buried for 3 days and 3 nights, and then comes back to life, claiming to be the Messiah of Israel. So from a human standpoint, from human logic, this story that we read in the scriptures about Yeshua the Messiah, Jesus Christ, coming back from the dead, is in complete insanity. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing, right? So that's what I mean by we're offered 2 types of insanity. On one hand, I'm given insanity from the world, and on the other hand, I'm giving another type of so-called insanity from the Bible. And when it comes down to it, brothers and sisters of the body of Messiah, and anyone who is looking for the truth out there, after all the hardships that I have come through and managed to survive, I will tell you that I will take and I will choose the insanity that the Bible offers me over the insanity of the world that the world offers me any day of the week and twice on Sundays. In order for you to get to that point where the Bible's insanity starts making sense, you have to be born again from above. But we're going to talk about that in another episode. Now I'm going to focus on Matthew 5:14. You are light for the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Likewise, when people light a lamp, they don't cover it with a bowl, but put it on a lampstand, so that it shines for everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people, so that they may see the good things that you do and praise your Father in heaven. Not too terribly long ago, I was going through a grueling, slow-motion train wreck of a breakup. While this was going on, I was playing a very good, intense game of Doom Eternal. Very good game. What does this have to do with anything? While I was playing this game, in the middle of my fervor of killing demons, all of a sudden, a voice goes off in my head that was not like any of my own thoughts. It was completely against the grain of my own thoughts and my character. And this voice said, I have not brought you up to this point for you to sit here and play video games and do nothing. In other words, I was that candle, and I understood that I was being put under a bowl, that I put myself under a bowl for the last so-and-so years of my life. He was basically explaining to me, he said, I have not made you a completed Jew. I have not drawn you close to me and brought you into my knowledge of who I am, just so that you could sit here and play video games and do nothing with it. And by the way, when I say hear his voice, or when he says to me, it's not a voice that you can hear with your ears. It's a voice that you hear with your mind, and it's not your own thoughts. It's very, very hard to explain. And no, I am not losing my mind. Anyone who has any kind of interaction, real true interaction with Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, can completely identify with what I'm saying right now, because they hear it and they feel it and they sense it the same way that I do. It is impressed upon me. It is impressed upon my spirit. It is not necessarily something audible with your ears. A good analogy would be like those little potato stamps that we used to make in kindergarten, that you carve out of the potato and then you damp it into the ink pad and then you impress something onto a piece of paper. So the Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, impresses upon my spirit like in the same manner. Maybe that would be a good analogy. Mind you, after I heard that voice, I paused my game and stopped playing, and I have played my video games perhaps 2 hours out of the entire last 6 months. I have put them aside, and I have decided to completely devote my time to studying the Word, validating His authenticity and proving that He is real in His Word, so that I could be a better ambassador for His kingdom and do what I'm called to do, which are these podcasts. Now I'd like to go back to Matthew 5:11, how blessed you are when people insult you and persecute you and tell you all kinds of vicious lies about you because you follow me. Rejoice, be glad, because your reward in heaven is great. They persecuted the prophets before you in the same way. Now, I am, by no definition, am I trying to compare myself to the prophets. Even though, from what I understand from what I just read, it's totally okay if I do, because he compares me to the prophets. But I know about something. I know a little something about being insulted and being attacked for my faith. My mother would do it, and my ex-girlfriend would do it. Now, I don't want you to think that I have mother issues, which in moment of confession, I probably do have some mother issues, and that's fine. We all have mother issues. We have father issues, we have mother issues, we have all family issues. We're human beings. We have issues. But these podcasts are not to be some kind of a punching bag and to vent out and grievances about my mother. That's not what these podcasts are for. My goal here is to show people, believer, non-believer, whoever listens to me, be it even one person, to show that I have gone through very tough situations, and where instead of going one direction, I chose God, and I've come out the victor instead of the victim. And here's the trick: I don't resent my mother, and I don't resent my girlfriend for being who they are, because if they weren't who they are, then I would have not have perhaps come to know Yeshua the Messiah and have the scales fall off of my eyes in the manner that they have. It is extraordinarily difficult to come to a point of love and forgiveness with a person that, for all intents and purposes, you really, really want to hate them. However, I am not allowed to hate. If you claim that you believe in the Messiah, Yeshua, you also are not allowed to hate. You're forbidden to hate. We as believers are forbidden to hate. I cannot hate my ex-girlfriend for what she did to me, and I cannot resent my mother and hate my mother for what she did to me. Because what they did to me led me to know that the Messiah, this man we call Yeshua, Jesus, is in fact real. I was hurt by this person. She hurt me in the worst way a woman can hurt a man. And yet, despite everything, and against your belief, I do not hate her. As a matter of fact, I'm very appreciative of what she did, and I understand now. I had two ways to look at it. I had the earthly way to look at it. I had my own natural fleshly eyes. I could understand what happened and lean on my own understanding and draw what I could out of it with my own natural human understanding. Or I could look at it through the eyes of the Lord Messiah Yeshua, the Lord Jesus, and look at it through heavenly eyes. I mentioned her before in episode 1. Hadassah. What happens when a witch meets a man of God and they fall in love and have a relationship? That's exactly what happened to me. This amazing person, when I found her, was delving into black magic. This is all true story, by the way. I'm not making this up. My life is full of all kinds of interesting tales, and they're all true. I have no reason to lie and invent any of this. So Hadassah, when I met her on the bus, she was astounding to me. She was let me just get this out of the way. The age gap between us was rather large. She blew me away with her knowledge of older things that I didn't know about, like Walt Disney's connection to Nazi Germany and Hitler. It's a real thing. You can look it up. You can Google that. Apparently, Walt Disney and Nazi Germany and Hitler had a little connection going on. She was a remarkable young lady. She still is a remarkable young lady. When I first met her, she appreciated Frank Sinatra, and she was very, very young in her years. Most young women don't appreciate artists of this kind. They're a little antiquated and outdated. One of my fondest memories of Hadassah is when we were cuddling on the bed and we were watching a certain movie, and after the movie ended, we were listening to Frank Sinatra's You Make Me Feel So Young, and I really got a kick out of the fact that I was as old as I was, and she was as young as she is, or she was at the time, and we were both appreciating such an extraordinary artist. It was a very sweet moment between us. Anyway, enough of all of that fun stuff. The point of my talking about her is because she was a vessel in God's hand. This was the only way that I could get through this kind of pain of what she did to me. To understand that she was a vessel in God's hand. God used her to break my heart, to get my attention, to test my character, to see what I would do. And I did exactly what he knew that I would do. I ran back to him with my pain. If there's anybody that you can run to with a broken heart, it's to him, because he knows all about broken hearts. And he healed me. It took a while. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't a miracle per se, an overnight miracle. And he's still working on me. It's still a work in progress. But this happened to me almost 6 months ago, April 14th of 2021. It was the most horrible night of my life. And I won't go into crazy details about it at the moment, maybe later down the road. But it was the night where I was literally crucified. But I had to be. I had to be crucified. I had to pay the price. I had to understand what I did. See, she broke my heart, but I broke his heart because I chose her over him. I chose to have my fun and to follow that as opposed to following him and learning from him and having him abide in me and with me and me and him and with him. And he had to break my heart through her. That's the only reason that she came into my life, is for her to teach me that lesson. And for the past 6 months, I've been wrestling with myself, and he has made it very clear to me that I am not allowed to hate her. I'm not allowed to hate my mom. I know that sounds really harsh, but my mom has my interaction with my mother is very, very unique. It is not easy. It was not an easy endeavor growing up with her. And again, this is by no definition any kind of attempt to badmouth my mother. I'm not trying to character assassinate her. I love her dearly. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, for episode 1, she was the person that introduced the concept of Messiah to me, and when I found him, she was the first person that I wanted to introduce him to her in return. it wasn't as well received as I thought it would be, because she thought that I was brainwashed and that I fell into a cult when that happened. I'm going to talk about my mom in another time. We're going to go back to Hadassah. We're going to focus on Hadassah. She is a little bit more pertinent to current events. So my relationship with her was outside of the will of God. Let's make that extraordinarily clear. Yes. We were boyfriend-girlfriend in every aspect, and we had a relationship that was outside of the will of God. During the relationship, she made it evident to me that she no longer showed interest in trying to learn about Yeshua, Jesus. In the beginning of the relationship, that was kind of a stipulation of mine. I didn't want to be unevenly yoked, and I wanted to teach her about Messiah Yeshua, and she was like, okay, sure, I'll learn. I want to learn. It didn't work out that way. Not necessarily. In the beginning, she kind of showed interest. She said that she wanted to learn, and she talked about it, but her actions showed me otherwise. She got a lot more passionate about things pertaining to black magic that she saw on the internet. Ouija boards, sigils and glyphs and symbols pertaining to Satan and different demons. And the more I got to know Hadassah, the more she shared with me that she actually had a personal demon attached to her named Ippos, also known as Anubis. And I researched all of this stuff, and all of these names are supposedly real names of real demons. Look it up, it's all in Google. You can look at all this up. And while all of these red lights are going off, telling me I probably need to stay away from this, I did not stay away. And she would ask me questions about her demons and why she was having the dreams that she had. She would see them in dreams, and she asked me about these dreams. And I really didn't know what to tell her, but I did tell her that I felt that God was fighting over her. God had a major calling on her life, and that she was being fought over by God and by the adversary. We call the adversary Satan. The devil is the adversary of God. And she listened, but apparently she didn't listen all too well. So initially she agreed to play the game and follow me and follow Jesus, or learn about Jesus, rather. But her actions said a lot more to me than her words did, and she would constantly show me things pertaining to the sigils of these demons and the devil himself, and I'll go into all kinds of spells and go into detail, things that I'd never asked for her to go into detail about. She would go into detail, and it was clear that her excitement was not necessarily drawn from Yeshua, Jesus, but from this other stuff. Red flag number one. Throughout the course of the relationship, I moved in with her. I moved out from where I was living, Marysville, Washington area, and I moved in with her. And all the while, mind you, she was telling me that she was in love with me, and I started to believe her, and she wanted to marry me, and that I was her husband and she was my wife. And for months and months, she begged me to move in with her to be her roommate, so that she wouldn't have to move back to her dad's house. I'm not going to talk about her dad, but her dad had a lot to do with making her the way she was. We're gonna leave all of that out. I wish him all the best. But I agreed to move in. And actually, here in about 10 days will be the 1-year anniversary to my moving in with her. I did not stay with her for the year, and we're going to get to that here in a moment. While I was living with her, she started showing interest in everybody else but me. I quickly became, from her husband, that I all of a sudden turned into a roommate. I was demoted rather quickly, And she always would show her attention to everybody else but me. Her friends, her high school friend, her high school ex-boyfriend that she was infatuated with and had Stockholm Syndrome. Um, she was still wrestling with all of that. And then through him, she met a man that she initiated a relationship with him while in the middle of a relationship with me. I had found out that she went back to her black magic. She basically said that she tried Christianity on and it didn't fit. It was not a good fit. And she went back to her black magic without telling me, which was a stipulation breaker. And even though I loved her, I could not really be with a person who actively practiced black magic. It just doesn't really work like that. And it was a problem because I really did care for her and love her, but I did not care and love for her beliefs. So I broke it off. And I didn't talk to her for 3 days because she went back to her black magic and didn't tell me that she went back to her black magic. So I basically dumped her, and in 3 days I was replaced by this one acquaintance that she met through her high school buddy that did horrible things to her in high school, and she had Stockholm Syndrome with. I will stress that Hadassah is not the real name of this person, and I will not ever say the real name of this person out of respect for this person. So we're going to just keep on calling her Hadassah. So after she replaced me with this man, after 18 months of a so-called meaningful, loving relationship, I was replaced within 3 days. And then it went from talking to this man online to evidently having him move up all the way from the east side of the country all the way to come to Seattle and remove me from the apartment that I moved in to live with her. And here's where it gets really good. After I found out that this so-called new boyfriend of hers was coming to live with her in this apartment that I was living with her in, under lease, essentially squeezing me out of my own place of residence, I had brought it to her attention many times that they were going to come back to the apartment and do what boyfriend-girlfriend do, and that I was going to hear them through the wall and it was going to destroy me. And she promised me for weeks, months and weeks, that it was never going to happen, that they were going to get a motel room, and that they were not going to do that to me. Well, guess what happened, guys? Exactly what I said would happen months in advance. He came back to the apartment. They went into the room. I was sleeping in the living room by this time because things were so bad between us that I took my mattress and I moved it into the living room and she had the bedroom. They went into their bedroom, closed the door, and I heard everything. I heard everything through the wall, exactly like I told her that I would. So I had to sleep in my living room of my own apartment and listen through the wall to how this guy was doing whatever to my girlfriend at the time, which was, I guess, no longer my girlfriend, my ex. So I stayed up all night listening to this through the wall. It's not that I eavesdropped. The walls were extraordinarily thin and I had no choice. It's not that I wanted to listen. I did not. So here I am, lying on my bed, lying on the mattress, in the dark, listening to all of this going on through the wall. My heart is shattered into a million pieces because of promises, broken promises after broken promises. And where most people, most men would have probably done something extraordinarily, horribly erratic, and probably would have killed those two, I didn't. I took my pain and I brought it to the only person I could possibly imagine or think of at the time, and that is God. It was probably the smartest thing I have ever done in my life. It was at that humiliating moment that I realized that that had to happen. And mind you, here's a very important little tidbit of the story, true story, that I tried my hardest to get out of that situation as fast as possible. When I found out that this alleged boyfriend was coming up to squeeze me out of my current place of dwelling, I was trying so hard to get out of that apartment because I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I didn't get out exactly when I wanted to. I got out a few days after it happened, and I realized that I had to go through that. I had to go through that. I had to have my heart broken. I had to have my heart broken in that fashion because I broke his heart when I chose that over him. And he made me realize that I could not be angry at any one of them. If he prayed for the very people that nailed him to the cross, I could pray for the very people that did that to me. He revealed to me that I had to forgive this person. I had to forgive this man because if I was in his shoes, and if I was in his situation, if I were to be him and I spoke to this beautiful girl for months and months and months online, and then hopped on a Greyhound bus and took everything I had with me to move 2/3 across the country for this girl, and then finally meet her, I'd probably do the same thing. I would probably do the same thing. 99% sure I'd probably do the same thing if I was this guy, if I didn't have a relationship with Messiah Yeshua. In an act of forgiveness, I cooked dinner for them after they did what they did to me, after God showed me what he showed to me, that I had to forgive them for everything that they did. I cooked dinner for them and I explained to this new boyfriend that how could I possibly show God's love to these two if I were to be bitter and resentful and hold on to that. And I had to come to terms with a lot of things. We cannot be proper ambassadors and representations, living representations of the life of Messiah Yeshua if we hold on to our bitterness and resentment and pain and hurt and suffering and sorrow. We have to let it go so that people can see our light, just like it's mentioned in Matthew 5:14. Right after the Lord says how blessed you are when people insult you and persecute you and tell you all kinds of vicious lies about you because you follow me. Rejoice and be glad, because your reward in heaven is great. They persecuted the prophets before you in the same way. Right after he says, you are a light for the world. And this is how we are a light to the world. By learning how to love the people that hurt us. By learning how to forgive the people that wrong us. By showing them grace and sometimes favor when they're not deserving, just like Abba, Elohim, Adonai Elohim, showed us grace and sometimes favor when we were not deserving. If I was this boyfriend, I would have probably have done the same thing. So I can't fault this person and be angry at this person for doing something that I would be guilty of doing myself. And I had to forgive Hadassah for doing it because of her youth, because of her age. She is legal. I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to alarm anyone and think that this was an illegitimate, illegal relationship. She was very legal, but she was extraordinarily young, a lot younger than me. But the age gap had nothing to do with it, because it was a beautiful 18 months, and it was an intense, intimate relationship. But I chose that over having a relationship with my God, and it cost me dearly. But in that pain and anguish, the Lord has showed me how to forgive. And when you come to a point where you can seriously, genuinely, sincerely forgive someone who's wronged you on that level, when you realize their purpose in your life, that God used them in that kind of a fashion to draw him back to him, then it changes perspective, and you don't look at it in the same way. You start to see the pain and the hurt less. And it took me a very long time to get to this point. It was, like I said before, it was the most grueling 6 months of my life. Probably the worst breakup, more profound than other breakups that I've had in my relationships, in my history of relationships. So now Hadassah is forever sealed in my testimony, and the Lord has shown me that I am forbidden to hate her. Not only am I forbidden to hate her, but I'm forbidden to hate her boyfriend, her current boyfriend, and I am not allowed to hate anyone who has made my life difficult, because it all brought me to that point where I recognized who this man Yeshua is, and acknowledged the fact that he is exactly who he says he is. This is something that we have to realize, that God is not what you think he is. Adonai Elohim, the God of the Bible, is not who you think he is. He is who he says he is. Once you understand that and accept it, and other certain biblical truths, it's easier to understand that you really don't have a whole lot of control over your life. And the quicker you learn how to submit it to him, the better off we are. Brothers and sisters of the body of Messiah, we're not guaranteed anything in this life. This life doesn't owe us anything. God, Adonai Elohim, does not owe us anything. We're not guaranteed anything in this life. We're not guaranteed to keep anything in this life. Not your children, not your spouse, not your car, not your house, not your money, not your health, not your very life. We are not guaranteed to keep anything forever in this life. It's all temporary, and it's all for a season. I'm coming up on the 45-minute mark here, and I just want to take this time to wrap it up and say that I really hope that perhaps through my story of this episode 2, maybe through these hardships that I'm sharing with you, you realize that I'm not perfect. I'm by no definition perfect, and I have gone through grueling ordeals to get to the point of where I am right now. And if my sharing my hardships has benefited anyone and made this person that we call Jesus and this entity that we call Adonai Elohim a little bit more tangible, then my purpose is done. My goal is being reached. So I thank you for listening for this podcast. I hope it's a lot better than the last one. I feel like the last one was a little shaky. Certain things were brought to my attention to fix, and I applied them into this podcast. Thank you very much for coming in and listening to this episode 2. And episode 3 is already in the works in my mind, and I'm going to put that together as soon as possible. Blessings be upon you. May the Lord bless you and keep you and shine his face upon you and give you his peace, his love, his favor, his mercy, his grace, his wisdom, and may he shower you in abundance and bring you to a certain point of knowledge that he is real in your life, and that he loves you, and that he wants to have a relationship with you. Nishtamea chaverim. You will be hearing from me soon, friends. I love you with the love of Messiah. Peace be with you. Shalom.